Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at The Listening Post. This week,
only a few fleeting images document the brutality.
Syria, on the outside looking in, the activists keeping the story alive from beyond the country. Pakistan, the government tries to stem the flow of news coming out of Osama bin Laden's old neighborhood. There are impersonators everywhere. On Twitter, there's a fake account in bin Laden's name. And the fake Obama rapping on the real Osama.
It's lights out for the hide-and-seek champion.
In our web video of the week.
Navy SEALs stashed inside left their heads spinning, then flew off in the night screaming, duh, winning.
With each new uprising, the season of Arab revolutions grows more and more difficult to cover. From Tunisia to Libya to Bahrain and now in Syria, government clampdowns on the media have become more methodical and often more violent. In one respect, journalists trying to report on Syria are emulating work done elsewhere. They're relying on amateur phone video and trying to verify news developments when they can. What sets the story in Syria apart, though, are the online activists working outside the country. Because so many reporters have been kicked out of Syria or taken into custody, activists outside Syria are playing a central role in the coverage. They're monitoring what's happening on the inside and spreading that news online. We begin this week not in Damascus, but in Beirut, London, and Chicago, with the journalists shaping the coverage of this story and who, from a distance, represent an existential threat to the Assad government.
Anger in Syria on Saturday.
Whether you're an activist in Syria wanting to get your protest video out to the world,
an important story that no reporter can get to,
or a news organization locked out of Syria wanting to cover the story, Osama Monajed is the kind of person you want to get in touch with. He's a Syrian activist, and you can find him at his laptop in London.
Well, since this whole revolution started, we knew the central role of media if you want this whole thing to succeed. So the first thing was to try to connect and organize efforts with everyone inside the country. People at the beginning didn't know if they have videos or using their mobile phones and where to send the images to and how to get these exposed. But slowly we managed to create the network where people know now exactly where to send the images to. And we have a virtual operations center. We monitor every video coming and every image coming and a story from inside the country. And it's been verified and then fed to international media and disseminated back into the country. So everyone in the country knows what happens in every corner. We get hundreds of media requests every day from major to minor media outlets from across the globe.
Now they're saying, watch out.
Is this a desperate PR stunt?
We've been liaising with these media outlets on daily basis.
The activists driving the protests and the media outlets trying to cover them have learned a lot since the winds of change first started blowing through the Arab world. But so too have the governments they are trying to take down.
Syria is a much closed dictatorship than Egypt or Tunisia. It's a much more repressive regime than those countries. But yes, they picked up a lot from the experiences of Egypt, Tunisia, and also Libya. And the main lesson they've learned is not to let the media in the first place. Because once the journalists are in, they can travel, they can see, they can ask people, they can capture very important footage.
Clearly, the Assad regime saw that if they are going to get ahead of the curve on this, they're going to have to use pretty massive violence and pretty massive police tactics and intelligence tactics. So if anything, the other examples that came before really, I think, helped to make the decision for the regime of whether it was going to proceed in a very hard stick direction or take a softer line.
In a way, I want to say they did not learn the real lesson that you cannot really shut down these voices, but of course it is to be seen. We'll see how the story develops, and we will learn a new lesson from Syria, whether a government crushing the opposition and the voices of opposition and the voices of dissent, whether that will help or not. I think other countries are observing what's happening in Syria right now to see if that is the way to go.
The Assad regime tells its side of the story to a select few foreign outlets. The president granted an interview to the Wall Street Journal, and the authorities allowed New York Times reporter Anthony Shadid in briefly. And it leans heavily on Syrian media outlets the state either owns or effectively controls.
Well, All media in Syria is essentially state-owned, except for example, one TV station as well as one newspaper, but they're more or less state-controlled, state-influenced, if not directly state-owned. They have a number of different media outlets. They are using all of those outlets very vigorously to get their narrative out and to undercut the narrative of the other side.
We've seen the same in Egypt up until the fall of Mubarak. We've seen the same thing in Tunisia up until the fall of Ben Ali, trying to give the impression that everything is okay. But like any other state media, it is to be viewed with a grain of salt. You know, people do not trust state media in the Arab world.
They are using propaganda techniques. I mean, it's Stalinist, Cold War type propaganda that no one trusts, no one believes in. And the thing that they do not know or realize is that people convert anything they hear in the state national media 180 degrees, then they digest it.
There is one Syrian opposition channel, Barada TV, which beams its signal in by satellite from London. But its credibility was not enhanced by a recent WikiLeaks story quoting U.S. diplomats saying the channel has been partly funded by Washington.
A lot of what Barada TV is putting out there may be true, but you've also got to realize that, you know, they have a particular funding source. That also has lent some credence to the Syrian government's claims of sort of outside conspiracies and external meddling. When it turns out, you know, we know from WikiLeaks cables that a bunch of these guys are actually funded by the Americans.
Well, the WikiLeaks cables reveal essentially glorified tito-tato from the US Embassy in Damascus. What is true is that Barda TV received just less than $1 million from a US-based NGO which promotes democracy and independent media around the world and not just in the Middle East region. That much is true.
And like Libya, Egypt, and others before it, Syria has also denounced Al Jazeera's coverage. Sana'a, the state-run news agency, reported pro-government students picketed Al Jazeera's offices over misleading practices by the channel.
It seems fairly evident that the Syrian government regards Al Jazeera right now as enemy number one in the media field, if not in the political field as well.
Al Jazeera has learnt that its missing journalist, Dorothy Pavaz, is now being held in Iran. It follows her deportation from Syria.
It's even more bitter because unlike in the situation in Libya and Egypt, the Syrian case is radically different because Syria long regarded Al Jazeera as essentially sympathetic to the resistance axis which it anchors. That said, the Syrians also realize that they're going to have to be pragmatic. In the more wide-open media space that Middle Easterners live in, thankfully, it's going to be something that they're just going to have to come to terms with at some point.
Because, like the embattled authorities elsewhere in the Arab world, the Syrians have learned that while they can lock news organizations out, they cannot silence the citizen journalists within.
Well, the Syrian regime now fears a mobile phone more than anything, fears a camera more than anything, fears any form of communication more than anything.
Our Global Village Voices now on the coverage of the story in Syria.
They're trying now to adopt the new technology to apply their censorship, but there is now thousands and thousands working for liberty on the internet and the freedom of internet. And all the time we are one step, they are 1 to 10 steps behind us.
The problem with Syria is that the internet is so weak and the connections are so poor. And what we're hearing is that in many cases the internet connections have been cut off. So these cyber activists or the people who are filming this stuff on their mobile phones are kind of being forced into this bottleneck. And the problem is that that gives the authorities the ability to monitor everything that's coming out of the country.
Few, if any, professional photojournalists are able to work in Syria. The effect of this is, although that we're getting authentic images from the ground about what's happening in these events, the lack of a professional aesthetic amongst those images means they're not getting the play and the coverage in the Western media that they would otherwise have.
If you've got an opinion on the news media that you'd like to get on the air as one of our Global Village voices, we suggest you join the thousands of our viewers who already follow us on Facebook and Twitter. They go to those sites to find out what stories we're working on so they can weigh in. Or you can just get in touch with us the old-fashioned way, via email. We're at listeningpost@aljazeera.net. Time now for Listening Post News Bites. The government in Pakistan is trying to limit the collateral PR damage it's taking over Osama bin Laden's assassination, and it's doing so by making life difficult for the media. The country's television regulator, PEMRA, wants foreign journalists to stop reporting from Abbottabad, the town where bin Laden was killed. 9 channels, including the BBC, CNN, and Fox News, have been told they must apply for a license if they want to continue reporting from there. Several international journalists have been told that their visas did not permit them to stay, while reporters trying to get into the country say they are being denied visas. The Pakistani government and its intelligence agency, the ISI, are facing all kinds of questions over how much they knew about bin Laden's whereabouts and how he was able to live undetected in a militarized area. In what looks like a retaliatory move, the ISI has been named as the source in the leaking of the name of the alleged CIA station chief in Islamabad, Mark Carlton. It's the second time in less than a year that the country's media have revealed the name of a clandestine American operative, and that will not help improve relations between the U.S. and Pakistan. The media crackdown in Bahrain, which we looked at a few weeks back here at the Listening Post, is continuing, and the latest target is one of the world's biggest news outlets, Reuters. The company says that its man in Bahrain, reporter Frederick Richter, has been given a week to leave the country after officials there took issue with what they called unbalanced reporting of the pro-democracy protests. 3 other reporters remain locked up in Bahrain. 21 journalists and bloggers are facing charges. 2 men, one a blogger, the other a founder of an opposition newspaper, have died in suspicious circumstances while in police custody, and that opposition newspaper, Al Wasat, has been shut down. Bahraini officials say they will allow a different Reuters journalist in to cover the country. We'll believe that when we see it. Anti-government activists in Libya are taking a different tack in their attempt to take down the Gaddafi regime. They're trying to silence state-run television. 6 lawyers have accused 2 channels, Al Jamahiriya and Al Jamahiriya 2, of using the airwaves to incite hate and violence. They argue that by depicting anti-government demonstrators as al-Qaeda terrorists or drug addicts, the channels are provoking Gaddafi loyalists into fighting back. The lawyers also plan to take their fight to Nilesat, the Egyptian satellite company, and will attempt to get the regime's channels dropped from that satellite. The United States, meanwhile, has placed Libya's Jamahiriya Broadcasting Corporation on its sanctions list, making it illegal for Americans to do business with those channels. The news coverage of the bin Laden assassination was confusing enough, what with all those conflicting statements coming from the White House on whether their target was armed or shielded. Now there's a photoshopping angle to this story. This is the photo that readers of the U.S.-based Yiddish-language daily Der Zeitung and magazine Der Woche were shown of the Situation Room on the night bin Laden was killed. Now compare that with the original and you'll see that 2 women, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and Director for Counterterrorism Audrey Thomason, have been removed. That decision was taken to keep in line with Orthodox Jewish laws that forbid the publication of photos of women. One of the publication's editors said he was sorry if their photoshopping was seen as disparaging to women and that it was, quote, in no way meant to relegate them to a lower status, unquote. Now, those editors may have followed the laws of their faith, but they broke the rules of a more immediate authority, the U.S. government, which clearly stipulates on its Flickr page the source of that image, that photographs may not be manipulated in any manner. 5 years ago, the microblogging website Twitter was launched into the social networking space. There's something about communicating with 140-character messages that resonated with the online community, and the site took off. It's more than just a self-promotional tool for attention-seeking celebrities. Twitter is now playing an important role in the coverage and distribution of breaking news stories. But within this microblogging phenomenon, there's a growing trend: fake Twitter accounts. Fraudsters impersonating real celebrities, politicians, even corporations are making mischief and scoring political points. Twitter has said that impersonation violates its terms of service, that it takes this issue very seriously, but it's not clear what the site can do about it. The Listening Post's Nick Muirhead now on fake Twitter accounts and how in some cases the fraudsters seem to be more real than the people they're impersonating.
If you believe everyone is who they claim to be on Twitter, then you'd think that the Queen of England relishes a bacon sandwich. Former US President George W. Bush has been busy, which is why he hasn't Twittered in a while. And Osama bin Laden thought there were more people following him on Twitter than in the US Army. The truth is, none of them really said that.
I would be very, very complimented if someone pretended to be me, because it shows that you have value. It shows that people care about you.
It says that Twitter has become a mature medium where you have a section of the market now that is parody, that is satire.
And it was satire that really brought home the impact of Twitter for high-profile American politician Rahm Emanuel.
It really came to my attention when a number of people emailed and or called and said, "You gotta be, what are you doing?" And I said, "What do you mean, what am I doing?"
Last year, Emanuel left his job as President Obama's chief of staff to campaign in Chicago's mayoral elections. Like any media-savvy American politician, he set up an official Twitter account. But he had some competition.
I'm from Chicago. Joining me in his first national TV interview, Dan Sinker, the man behind the fake Twitter account @Mayor Emanuel.
Chicago-based journalism professor Dan Sinker was channeling his inner Emanuel on the site. The tweets were sharp, aggressive, and offensively profane, much more like the real Rahm Emanuel than the real Rahm Emanuel's account.
And then we followed it regularly. That's how it came to my attention. A number of people
took it seriously.
Well, seriously, or at least thought it was close enough to my
voice,
old voice.
Yeah, oh yeah, sure.
Voice.
People were more entertained by the fake one, the real account. It's just boilerplate stuff like, oh, Rahm Emanuel is going to be appearing here in the city. Whereas the fake account was just like an angry jerk, which you kind of, like, you know, you kind of expect Rahm Emanuel to be.
To use the media to destroy someone who you don't like, I think that's wrong. Whereas with someone like Rahm Emanuel,
well, many times he has expressed my sentiments exactly.
You're having fun with a caricature of who he really is, and I'm sure he's not that bothered.
Politicians may be easy targets for Twitter comics, but they're by no means the only ones falling victim to this growing trend. Darth Vader has a fake Twitter account. Michael Jackson tweets from beyond the grave. And those of you looking for a satirical slant on real news, someone's pretending to be that right-wing American news agency.
I think in general, fake Twitter accounts, the ones that get recognized or the ones that get big because they have a voice or they have something that rings true to people.
The best Twitter accounts have an element of humor. In 140 characters, it brings out people's best. It forces you to be concise. In contrast, say, to blogs where people go on and on and on and become more and more boring. At least on Twitter, if you're boring, you're limited to 140 characters.
Twitter impersonators aren't just playing the new medium for laughs. Take BP Global PR, created by California-based comedian Josh Simpson. He said he set up the account to counterspin the petroleum giant's media double talk over last year's oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico.
I think the environmental impact of this disaster is likely to have been very, very modest.
It had been a month, and you know, we were all watching that footage every day of the oil spewing into the ocean, and BP were saying that it was 5,000 gallons a day, and my knowledge of a milk carton, there's enough for me to know that that was not 5,000 gallons a day. The more I learned when I went to New Orleans and talked to people, the more I realized my instinct that they were spinning things was right, and to a degree I'd never imagined.
At least 56,000 barrels a day, possibly as many as 84,000.
We went from being very jokey to realizing our best tweets were in PR speak. Our best tweets were the ones that could actually be confused with actual BP tweets.
So, like Mr. Emanuel, execs at BP quickly try to distance themselves from the feed. But, unlike Mr. Emanuel, it didn't pan out that well for them.
When BP asked Twitter to have us change our name, immediately was trending across the country. I think that's why they never even bothered us again, because they realized that, you know, we were only going to cause more of a stink if they meddled in our business. And that's exactly what they didn't want.
Twitter itself is supposed to be a subversive force in media and in culture, which in some senses it is. What's ironic is that it seems as if much of the subversion lies in fiction, lies in irony. And often traditional regimes, highly centralized authoritarian regimes, don't get satire. When it comes to fake accounts in the Middle East, my guess is that it's hard political satire. So it would be meant to reveal the real nature of an Assad. or a Mubarak or a Gaddafi.
Mustafa Hussein's creation did exactly that. The Egyptian student set up a fake account for the country's intelligence agency, State Security. He said he did it as a joke, but it turned out to have quite a chilling effect.
The interesting thing about Twitter is that when you're followed by someone, it sends you an email saying X is following you now on Twitter. Basically, people receive this email, State Security is now following you on Twitter.
And you get an email back at State Security, you're going to be scared. I mean, it's the paranoia level, particularly because of the history of the regime and regimes like it, has heightened people's fear level.
It might be actually quite insensitive for people who might have been tortured by the State Security in retrospect. But the next day, I just came out with information that this is a fake account.
At 140 characters, Twitter is media writ small, but the characters behind all the fake accounts bring a major edge to the world of microblogging.
I actually think that the fake accounts add to the value of Twitter. It shows that you can have a lot of fun. I think the danger of Twitter is we take it too seriously, because it's a 140 character public instant messaging platform, which is taken off. That's all it is.
Spin in our media and in our culture gets a voice. And it's, to me, just totally unacceptable. And I think with Twitter, you know, you can kind of cut through the BS in a way.
Because it's a lot easier to say what you're really thinking when you tweet it as someone else.
More Global Village voices now on the fake tweeting phenomenon.
Fake Twitter accounts are so funny because they exaggerate the traits that people or organizations are perceived to have. And it takes the messages that they might want to send in their official Twitter accounts and it twists them in an exaggerated and humorous way, so that even if people might know that the account is fake, they might then reflect back on the actual account that's being parodied and think that it has those traits.
My favorite fake Twitter accounts are those that are particularly creative. The Libyan State TV account is a great example of this, and of course I also really like any of those that are making fun of world leaders. I also thought that the BP Global PR was an excellent, timely, and funny fake Twitter account. Generally, as long as a person is clear that their account is a parody, then it's all in good fun.
Finally, every time America elects a new president, a small industry crops up consisting of comedians trying to cash in by impersonating the new man in the White House. The best Obama impersonator we've seen goes by the name Alpha Cat, real name Iman Croissant. He's an American actor, impersonator, dancer, and singer who puts all of his talents to use in our web video of the week. It's his alternative rap version of the president announcing the death of Osama bin Laden, and it's approaching 3 million hits on YouTube. We'll see you next time at the Listening Post.
Let's go. My fellow Americans, I'm here and I'm happy to say that we can celebrate on this momentous day. Now, look, let me be clear, Osama bin Laden, we caught him and he's out of here. It's lights out for the hide-and-seek champion. We found him hiding in a dusty-looking mansion. So we sent a team, and they rolled up on his mans and him and sent him nighty-night with a permanent justice-laced ambient. Our intelligence is fly. They put in a lot of work, using all resources. Shouts out to Google Earth. Watch for months like an eagle eyeing a rat in the dirt. Then in return, the favor brought terror right to his own turf. Team 6 showed up in choppers. It was so cash. Lit his house with red dots like it had a rash. Navy SEALs stashed inside, left their heads spinning, then flew off in the night screaming, duh, winning. Some members of Al-Qaeda just won't admit it. They don't believe we got it. They say it's not legit. They get nervous because they know they took a major hit. They own that Donald Trump. They want to see the death certificate. Pakistan's ambassador's mad. He can have a seat. How you not know bin Laden was living right down the street? We went down low and did it my way. We so excited, and it ain't even Friday. America, we won the battle, but the war is still on. We'll fight for our freedom with our flag flying strong. That's all I gotta say. I'm heading back to the Situation Room. Oh, that'll be 2 terms, please. Thank you.